Welcome back to the Data for Good podcast. Today, we are joined by Todd. Austin is a data leader, an AI leader, and is currently team lead at Sonnen in Berlin. Fascinating episode as we will be talking about data and how we use that to build smarter grids and lower energy bills, something that everyone will be interested to hear. We'll be listening about virtual power plants, being introduced to those, forecasting, energy trading, and everything that goes along with that. Really great episode. Enjoyed this one. Hope you do too. Austin, thank you for joining us on the podcast. So, yeah, super relevant topic. It's front of mind for a lot of people due to some recent occurrences. But yeah, we're here to talk about data and specifically in the energy sector. So, thank you for joining us. A quick intro or a quick insight into why we're talking about this with you today.
Yeah, hi. I'm really happy to be here. So I've been working in the data world, data science, for quite a while. But a lot of the work that I've done is a little bit by chance in the beginning of my career, and then a bit more by choice in the later part of my career. Has really been focused on data science in energy applications, and particularly renewable energy, but also energy grids. Also, it's a super interesting topic. I think recent, particularly in Europe, recently over the last few years, energy independence, more reliance on renewables. There's been a constant trend of reliance on renewables. This is not only a technical challenge, but in many cases, it's also a data challenge.
Well, it's affecting everyone, right? Whether in the home or enterprise. I mean, we're no longer just a couple of candles and a log fire. At home, energies, and especially with AI as well, it's almost a battle for energy. So it's on everyone's mind. It's super important. You're working more on the energy grids at the moment. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about that and how data is kind of helping to transform that area in particular.
Yeah, right now I'm working at a company called Sonnen. It's a German headquartered company, although operating around the world. And actually, the focus where I am recently for the last 4 or 5 years is on actually residential energy. So this would be the energy inside your household. And so Sonnen makes batteries, so household battery energy storage systems, among other things, also energy EV chargers, and we also work with a variety of installers around the world to install our products along with solar panels. But the main focus is if you have or want solar, you might want to store that energy for use at times when either the energy is more expensive or when the sun is not shining. I think this is generally the reason people might want to invest also in a battery instead of just solar panels. However, one of the things that Sonnen also offers, and has been really one of the foundational companies in Europe to offer this, is a virtual power plant. And this is the ability to not only use that battery stored energy for your household, but also for stabilizing the grid. So from a data perspective, this is why it's so interesting as well for us nowadays, because it's not just about getting energy from the sun and using it in your house. It's getting energy from the sun, being able to potentially store some of that for later, but also be able to help stabilize the grid if needed through things like being able to put some of that energy into the grid or take some of the energy out of the grid, so that the grid itself can maintain as stable of a frequency as possible. This offers customers a lot of different options. So obviously this is grid stability might be a little bit different than trying to actually maximize or optimize your energy usage at home, right? They have slightly different end goals.
Yeah.
But there's different incentives for both. So you can, particularly at Sonnen, but also other companies that offer VPPs, you can get some financial kickback. Essentially, you allow your battery to be used for grid stabilization purposes, and you get some money in return.
Okay, so is this quite a new concept? Because everyone can think quite simply solar panels, X kilowatt, I use Y kilowatt, excess I sell back. So what's this next step? So for us mere muggles, how does it work?
Yeah, so I would say in the grand scheme of energy grids, it's a fairly new thing. But the VPP, particularly Sonnen's VPP, has been around for many years, more than 5 years, I believe. And so the technology itself is not necessarily brand new, and this is why we actually see other competitors now coming up in the market as well. But I would say that one of the new things that's coming up is really being able to do household energy management. Maybe you remember in the past you could connect things to your like Google Home, for example, and yeah, have everything connected there. This was more actually about being able to turn lights on and off and things like this, which maybe in terms of the household skills, really micromanaging the energy devices. But what we're talking about is when we have steerable devices, so things that like your battery, you can charge and discharge at any time. And so what's new is we have also in Germany in particular, but also other places in the world, we have dynamic tariffs. So the energy price might differ throughout the day, every hour. In the future, it'll be every 15 minutes. And so being able to optimize how your household takes energy from the grid at the cheapest times of the day and uses it at the most expensive times of the day is really a data science and really an optimization challenge. It's really a data challenge that we need to solve. And it might not just be a battery, by the way. You might have a battery, you might have an electric vehicle charger, you might have a heat pump or air conditioner in your house, and they're all electronic devices. They can all be told when and when not to function in a certain way. So really, we're talking about management of the whole household ecosystem, and this, of course, just adds complexity to that optimization challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, tell us more about that from a data perspective. So
yeah, so
where's the magic?
Yeah, so from a data perspective, you're dealing with, I mean, some people might call it telemetry data, some people might just call it time series data. And then you also have, of course, electronic control theory. So you have input data that would be a forecast of what you expect for the next day, 2 days, 3 days, however you want to organize your system. But let's just say, for this simplicity, 1 day in advance, you know what the energy prices are going to be. They've been released from the energy auction 1 day before, and you have a weather forecast for tomorrow, so you can estimate how much solar production you can produce, and maybe based on your historical usage patterns, when you charged your EV, how much you needed to charge it, what your household consumption, energy consumption looked like throughout the day. And if you're using a heat pump, for example, when the heat pump was turned on and off. And then, of course, you have the prices for the future. So you need a forecast. So the basis of all this is having a good forecast, which is very difficult, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine trying to forecast. I know myself, like, when would I forecast? I would be terrible at forecasting when I'm going to turn the oven on. Okay, maybe sometime in the evening, but not every day and not to the same extent. Some days I have stuff in the oven, on the stovetop. My wife's doing laundry. Being able to predict these kinds of things that we call behind the meter metrics about an individual household are extremely difficult. But what you can do is you can really look at some of the, let's say, lower frequency patterns. So we know really in general, people don't consume as much energy at night because they're generally sleeping. And the largest peaks in the energy grid tend to be in the morning and in the late afternoon, early evening. So people are getting up and going to work. People are coming home from work and, I don't know, turning the TV on, whatever. These are the typical peaks that you see in energy consumption. And the times of year when the energy prices are the most volatile, you see the biggest swings between those are really peaks, and the rest of the day is generally pretty low. So you have these different let's say time series, and what you want to do is you want to optimize the really you want to minimize the cost.
Mm.
So there's a certain cost of taking energy from the grid. How can you take these different components that you have that require energy from the grid, combined with the base level of energy that your household requires, and what you might be able to cover with something like solar?
Mm.
You can do it really simply if you only have a battery. I think then you're really just considering what you can store in the battery and how you can use it for later. Things like electric vehicle chargers might also be really easy if you're only considering that people might generally just charge their vehicle in the evening
Yeah.
and unplug it in the morning. Maybe a really simple approach is just to say, okay, unplug it before the price curve starts to go up. I mean,
Set an alarm to unplug the car.
yeah, this is very simple. Maybe you don't need a data-driven algorithm to do this for you, but certainly those, because those prices change every day. If you're someone who's not really geeking out over looking at the price forecast or the prices for the next day, then you might not be able to stay on top of it. And so, yeah, this is a really hot topic. This is something that, of course, we're working on at Sonnen, but also there's a lot of other competitors, a lot of other people in the market, companies in the market that offer the ability to steer these devices for you. And I think as we move into an energy world, let's say, where there's more and more renewables coming onto the market, this makes them more volatile. And this means that times of year, for example, when there's not as much renewables, when you can't rely on sun or wind, then those prices can get really high. And so the potential for really optimizing your household energy usage, you can see some days where, I mean, of course, depending on how much your energy bill normally is, but you can really make the whole margin in one day. It's really amazing. And a particularly recent example is actually in May across Europe, particularly Northern Europe. This month we've seen already a couple instances where there was so much renewables, sun and wind, that prices for consuming energy were negative. So if you could just take energy during those times, if you were on a dynamic energy tariff, you were getting paid for turning your oven on, for doing all these things, for charging your EV. And so this is also an area where we can optimize. We can say, look, this person wants to charge their electric vehicle. They they normally have a high peak at certain time, but let's really focus on making sure we can maximize. Prices are negative. They're paying us to take energy. So it's really interesting. We expect the price to get more and more volatile, which just adds more potential for being able to optimize those systems for lowering the customer's energy bill.
So who are the winners and the losers? So if with the energy bills, if you're unaware and you just leave it to its own devices, and you're charging your car in the morning and you've got everything running in the early evening, you're going to be a loser, right? But if you're aware of the data, do you have access to the data? Are you having to look at your own data with smart meters, so therefore you can make the most of it? The options are there. Is that the reality?
So I think there's some really general things that anybody can do, actually. If you're someone who's conscious about both costs and, let's say, energy concerns, and you like to I think there's a lot of people that like to kind of optimize themselves, optimize their own household. The day ahead prices are published every day in the early afternoon. I think around 1:12 or 1, depending which time zone you're in. So you can look online. Actually, the one, I think EPEX is one that people tend to look at. EPEX spot prices. So this is generally what a lot of the energy retail wholesale prices are based on. But what I'd say is that these dynamic tariffs, these kinds of like dynamically changing energy tariffs, they're designed actually to steer people from using energy during the peak periods. So the times when people tend to use the most energy are the times when it's most expensive. It makes the most sense anyway. So if you're someone that says, okay, I'll run my heater at night, but I'll make sure I turn it off in the morning, and I'm okay being a little cold colder, or not having it warm, not having the heater running in the morning.
Yeah.
For example, if you have an electric heater, that is a heat pump. Then you can save some energy during that morning peak, for example. By the way, we tend to see much higher price variability in the winter times. In the summertime, tends not to be as big of a concern. They are more they're not as volatile, or the price spreads are not as large.
Yeah.
But you might be someone that would say, okay, I wonder what my energy provider, or a energy provider, you can always check, do different comparisons. But if I go to a switch from a fixed flat rate energy tariff, where I pay the same amount per kilowatt hour across the day, say, well, actually, I want to go to a dynamic tariff because I think I can steer at least some of the large prices that I have, or at least be aware of it. Actually, what we see is in some cases that simply just having the same usage over the year, looking at different energy tariffs, that people actually would largely pay less anyway. Of course, depending on your energy usage. If you're really a big consumer, or if you're a industry and you're worried about your company and you have a power plant, for example, then of course the margins are bigger, because also your energy bill is generally bigger. But I think for a standard household, probably, particularly if you're one that already has solar, switching to a dynamic tariff will likely cover a lot of those costs for you already. But I think the big winners in particular would be those who really that have big loads. Things like electric vehicles. I think electric vehicles are one of the easiest things to optimize the charging schedule, which surprisingly a lot of people don't do, by the way. They don't think about it. They don't want to, I don't know, they want to plug their car in and have it charged right away. Even at their own home, where they're not necessarily going to be there, they want to make sure it's charged. And I would say a lot of users just don't use smart features on their chargers either, where they maybe give a certain time at which the charger needs to be unplugged, right? And say, okay, you can just kind of trickle charge and then wait until the rest of the energy usage is there. If you have solar panels, okay, let's only charge it at a time when it's with like excess surplus that I have. But yeah, I think a lot of people just are looking for convenience and quick. And so if you're looking to be a winner in this sense, then there's some really small things that you can even do just with your own behavior. But of course, Sonnen included, but lots of different companies, I think, lots of different charger manufacturers also offer these kinds of modes where it is, even if it's a really minor intelligence, I think being able to set these things, have these kinds of options, really can help you. And particularly when we talk about energy optimization of charging, I think this is a really big winner.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? See how data 10 years ago was about businesses getting that edge, whereas it's trickling down now to the end user, and data driven is going to become a daily thing for a lot of people without even being data driven. If you like, you wouldn't go to your parents and say, hey, are you data driven? It's a data driven household. But in reality, it's becoming more and more like that, and energy is probably the most obvious.
Yeah, I think it's also something that, it's easy to compare your energy bill. It's something that when you're turning something on and off, like you do have some control, you have some ownership over it, which I think makes people more invested. But also, I think it's something that, in the end, the customer also generally wants to know that they're saving money. And if you can offer them these things, you can show them they're saving money without really even needing to do much on their own, then this is generally, I think, across the board a win. So yeah, it's not just about the companies trying to save money on their own operation in the end. These days as well, you need to offer something to the customer that can save them money, so they decide to go with your product in the end, right?
I just keep picturing there was a meme or an image of the thermostat on the home, and it was Christmas presents. So it was like lots of Christmas presents, not so many Christmas presents. So it's going to be even more like that. Like you can teach that to your children, right? You could have a Christmas fund next to your smart meter.
Yeah. How many PlayStation games did I earn by not playing PlayStation right now?
Right, there we go. And this is very much on a high level. And this is when we go a bit more complex, we can talk about data and energy. We look at the energy trading. So how's that evolve? If it's evolving in the home, it's going to be probably 10x evolving on a energy trading scale. So yeah, how's that looking?
So when I talk about these dynamic tariffs, we talk about these day ahead prices that you can see. This is the energy market, actually. So in a way, so when you are participating in something like the virtual power plant program, right? Actually, you're participating in energy trading. In our case, we are doing the forecasts for our customers that sign up for these for the VPP, and we are forecasting, and based on our forecast of how much our customers will consume or produce that day, then we have a good estimate of what we can buy or sell on the energy trading market, on the energy market. And there's not only the day ahead market, but there's also an intraday market where it operates much more frequently at 15 minutes. And so, yeah, when we start talking about, and really this is designed to buy and sell energy, but also in our cases to help stabilize the grid. But yeah, we can participate in both. And so, in a way, even if you're doing some optimization, you're playing against that market. So you're not buying and selling bids in the energy market, but what you are doing is you're playing in the same market. And so what's really interesting about energy trading then is, I mean, this again requires good forecasts. The better forecasts you have, then the better you can estimate how much you're able to provide. But also, as an energy provider, you actually have regulatory requirements that you need to have within a certain margin. You need to be able to predict what your load or what you're going to input to the grid or take from the grid that day, so that the larger transmission organizations actually kind of don't mess up their planning. You can actually face some regulatory challenges. But what's really interesting is that the energy trading area is becoming much more of a viable business option when we talk about batteries. And particularly, okay, so you might have a battery at home. It's not that large of a battery, actually. That the amount of energy you can buy and sell with that battery is pretty small.
Penny stocks.
But what we're seeing is really a big shift is at the grid scale. So now you have these huge battery systems, grid scale battery systems, which have a lot of capacity. And so now you can play a little bit. And so you might as well have like some large, I don't know, some farm. Maybe it's not a huge solar plant, but yeah, if you have batteries, then you also have the ability to store some of that energy that you produced and sell it at times when it's more favorable, or take energy to store in those batteries at a time when it's more favorable. So the scales are larger, right? You can buy and sell a lot more. The potential, if you have a good trading algorithm, if you have good forecasts, then of course the potential returns are much higher as well.
What are when you are forecasting on these big energy, other than the weather, what other contributing factors are there?
I mean, weather will be the largest one, particularly because these are battery storage systems that are storing renewable energy, right? So, excuse me. So you might have, really, I would say weather is the largest feature, but also the consumption demands. So you have things like, actually, one of the biggest important things is whether it's a weekday or a weekend, because the energy requirements are much different. Factories, for example, are operating much less frequently, or maybe some factories operate on the weekends, but very few operate on Sundays, in Germany at least. So this is why in Germany we saw some of these negative prices on a Sunday, because the energy demands from the consumers were not as high, but you still had lots of wind and lots of solar, and they needed to get rid of it. So they're offering people money to take the energy out of the system.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
so and of course this not just weekday, weekend, but yeah, you need to know holidays, you need to know events. There is some maybe more regional things that have an effect. Yeah. So, but I would generally say weather is one of the largest contributors.
there's going to be some, well, if there's not already, big investments in weather folk, right? They're going to be the best paid. Because with all these algorithms, it's coming back to data quality, I guess, but all these high level algorithms, depending on the weather, but it's relying on someone else to create an accurate forecast, right?
Yeah, which is also why I actually used to work in a weather forecasting company, developing services for energy companies, which is a really viable business. But what I would say is that what we've seen now, coming from my academic background, actually in physical science, weather and ocean forecasting, yeah, what we've seen actually in the forecasting world is that weather forecasting has gotten significantly better over the last several decades, particularly as kind of with Moore's law. So as our ability to compute these big models at higher and higher resolution to be able to resolve some of the smaller atmospheric things that happen, the weather forecasts have gotten significantly better as well. And now what you see, which is really interesting, there was an article a little while ago, but now there's also AI models, purely AI models. Google just released one a couple months ago that actually outperforms some of the best weather forecast models that are based on physics that are run in some of the large weather forecasting research centers. Even at hurricane tracking and things like this. So this is also a really big leap. And what we're seeing now is also let's say a marriage of the two. So you have physics informed machine learning algorithms. So you can take some of the physical concepts and use them as features into an AI model. And so actually the weather forecasting is getting much better, and for a while now, you've had also experts in weather forecasting that really have worked very closely together with energy providers. That's, things that we don't normally think of, but, just temperature and wind can also change how much energy you can transmit through a high transmission or a high voltage transmission line. So you actually, so the large transmission operators, they need to know how the weather is going to affect the chemical or the electrochemical composition of the cables that they use to transmit energy. Like, this is stuff that I think most people would never think was really needed, but yeah, it can have a big effect actually when you total it all up, just because, again, the scales are so much larger.
It's great. I mean, we could probably talk for hours about this. I'm conscious of time. These are just bite-sized introductions. What are you excited about within the data space and energy? What's on the horizon?
I personally think that the energy management space is really cool. It's really interesting. It's optimizing a lot of stuff. I think we're still working with fairly fine margins, but as we develop better and better methods for this kind of optimization, as AI models and technology is evolving, I think we really have much more ability to impact things in the household. Not only that, I think, the concept of VPP and grid stabilization with household assets, it's growing also around the world. I think this will be I'd be really curious how this takes off in other countries as well. I think Germany's actually pretty advanced in that regard. But my own home country in the United States, actually, still kind of batteries are now becoming popular. But for a while, it was really just about solar.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about using the EV batteries as also virtual power plants. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think it's really cool space to be in. We're talking about electrification of everything, and I'm an environmentalist myself, so I think our ability to move more to renewables and to find ways that we can really make it a viable future for a lot of people, I think it's really cool. And it's, like I said at the beginning, it's a data challenge.
Yeah.
It's not just a technical challenge. It's really a data challenge in the end.
Nice. It's well, if people do want to dig a little bit deeper, want to talk to you, spar with you a bit more on this, where can they find you? What have you got coming up this year?
You can find me. LinkedIn is always a good place to find me as well. I'm in Berlin, so sometimes at various different meetups, not just the data for good ones, the Zuma ones, but I think you can find me there, or feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think this has been not only for the data folks, but I think just general population and hearing about how we all could be a little bit more data driven. Just hope, there might be Power BI tablets near the front door of most homes. But it's been a pleasure, Austin. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Yeah.
Until next time. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.